Another week, another flurry of transfer speculation surrounding Middlesbrough Football Club. This time, rather than outgoings, Middlesbrough are looking at doing a lot of incoming deals between now and the end of the January transfer window. Middlesbrough have been linked with 4 different players in the last few days with regards to a potential move to the Riverside, with reports suggesting that this week is going to be absolutely key in terms of getting those deals over the line. There's been a lot of speculation, a lot of reports around a lot of these different players. So what I've done is I've pulled them all together for you to give you the very latest on Middlesbrough's transfer pursuits during the January transfer window. Let's go. First up is Mr. Familiar, Ryan Giles. Now, I've started with Giles. I know that people know all about Ryan Giles, so I'm not going to bore you with all the details about why he'll be a good signing for Middlesbrough. I've started with him because he is the player who is most likely to join soon. Middlesbrough are in talks with Hull City over a deal. TalkSport have reported that deal is very much on the way to being completed, with a deal potentially being done this week. Hull City are already in discussions over a potential replacement for him. They're looking to sign someone on loan as a left back, which shows that they're very much resigned to this deal happening. Reports haven't suggested anything in terms of a transfer fee just yet. We don't know exactly what's going on with that. But Ryan Giles moved to Hull City for £4 million last summer, and things haven't really gone to plan for him. So you'd suggest that if Middlesbrough were to be striking a permanent deal for him, it would be somewhere significantly lower than that. Middlesbrough are very keen on Ryan Giles. He was absolutely outstanding in the 2022-23 season under Michael Carrick. He was a really key part of that side who reached the playoffs. And Middlesbrough have really sort of struggled to replace him at left back. We have tried a few times with Lucas Engel and Alex Bangura and Neto Borges, but the feeling is that Ryan Giles is the man and possibly the missing piece of the jigsaw for Michael Carrick as he looks to build another swashbuckling attacking team who can consolidate their current place in the top 6. So this is certainly one to watch out for. It does sound like a deal is potentially on the way in the next few days. Like I said, not quite sure in terms of transfer fee, but for Middlesbrough, it would be a really good piece of business, almost a bonus piece of business, because I don't think left back was the target or was the position that Middlesbrough were actively targeting at the start of the window. But given the opportunity to sign Giles, someone who knows exactly what it's like playing under Michael Carrick, he's a perfect fit for Carrick. Carrick is very, very keen on Ryan Giles as well. He's been leading this chase. It is a very, very exciting one-on-one, which could potentially be done in time for the weekend. So let's just keep an eye on that one. But yes, very, very exciting news with Giles. He looks like he's potentially going to be the first new signing coming through the door this January. Next on the list is Mark Travers. Now, he's another player who Middlesbrough have been heavily linked with this month. Now, the goalkeeper is 25 years old, currently plays for Bournemouth. He's finding first-team opportunities difficult to come by at the Vitality Stadium. They've currently got Kepa as their first-choice goalkeeper from Chelsea. So Mark Travers is in search of some regular first-team football, and it seems that Middlesbrough are very much closing in on a loan deal to sign him for the rest of the season. I'm not quite sure at this point whether that's going to be a loan deal with a potential option to sign him permanently in the summer. Middlesbrough could well be looking to strengthen between the sticks. It is a position which has almost become a little bit tricky in the last couple of months. Seny Dieng started the season as the club's number 1. Solbrin was biding his time for the first couple of months and then really put in some very, very impressive performances at the start of December. He really seemed to nail down that number 1 spot, but then suffered a horrific, I don't know why I said it like that, a horrific shoulder injury, which has kept him out or will keep him out for the majority of the season. So Solbrin's out. Tom Glover's currently playing in goal. Seny Dieng is he's been out injured, but he is now back, and he was kept on the bench for the last match against West Brom. Michael Carrick saying that Tom Glover deserves it on merit, and there's just a sort of feeling maybe around Seny Dieng that he could potentially be someone who might move on, whether it be in January or in the summer. And Mark Travers would be someone who would come in, likely be a first-choice goalkeeper, probably to deputise for Solbrin, who's, as I said, is out for the rest of the season. He would likely come in and take that number 1 spot for the rest of the season, at least. And for Middlesbrough, that would be a really good signing, in my opinion. Mark Travers is a really good goalkeeper, someone who a lot of clubs in the Championship were interested in. Nothing against Tom Glover. I'm not entirely convinced by him personally. I don't think he's good enough to be the goalkeeper for a side who are challenging for promotion. And I know he's not first choice, and it's down to injuries and that sort of thing. But for me, if Mark Travers was to come in, I think he'd be a really astute signing, someone who would slot straight into the team, and someone who would really help Middlesbrough as they look to secure promotion this season. So another one to keep an eye on. It does feel like this is the deal that will happen. I think it sounds like the hold up at Bournemouth's end is the fact that they've had an injury to another goalkeeper. I forget his name, the third choice goalkeeper. So they're probably just wanting to bide their time to make sure that he's back fit before allowing Mark Travers to head out. But certainly one to watch, and one that Middlesbrough look seemingly quite confident about striking before the end of this month. Next player on the list who's been linked was it was a little bit of a surprise, and that's Glen Kamara. Now, the midfielder is someone who is well known to fans in the UK. He spent time with Rangers and with Leeds United. He's a player of real pedigree. He's 29 years old. He's a tough tackling midfielder, someone who's a bit of a no-nonsense addition in midfield. And for Middlesbrough, it remains to be seen what exactly will happen with this one, and whether Middlesbrough will be able to get a deal done. He's currently playing his football in France. Things aren't exactly working out for him there, hence why he's potentially looking for a move. And it's been suggested that he could be available on loan this month with Middlesbrough interested. Now, central midfield has been a position that Middlesbrough have been lacking a little bit of bite in this season. That's been largely down to Aidan Morris being injured. He's been out for a good long time, but he has come back in the last couple of games. Made a substitute appearance a couple of games ago, and then started against West Brom and got man of the match and was just absolutely outstanding. I don't think fans have realised just how much we've missed Aidan Morris. So he's back now, and that's great. And that's great news for Hayden Hackney as well, because it maybe frees him up to I don't know, play his natural game, which is going forward a little bit more, which is great. Dan Barlaser, we've spoken about it in previous videos. I'm not completely convinced by him, so I don't think he's good enough to be playing in the starting 11. So for me, Middlesbrough have just been lacking a little bit of bite this season. It's great that Aidan Morris is back, but I think potentially the addition of someone like Glen Kamara could be really good. He would bring in vital experience. He knows what life is like in the EFL. He's played there with Leeds United. He's a tough tackling midfielder, someone who would be really, really good at closing out these games that Middlesbrough have so far been struggling to do. So it remains to be seen what will happen with this, whether it's a deal that will get done before the end of January. But it is encouraging to see that Middlesbrough are potentially looking at this profile of player, someone who's experienced, someone who's tough tackling, uncompromising, because I do think Middlesbrough are lacking just that little bit of bite. And in those kind of games where Middlesbrough need to see out the games, it could be a formidable force with someone like Glen Kamara alongside Hayden Hackney to really shield that defence and make sure that Middlesbrough can see out a potential victory. So yeah, one to watch here. There hasn't been too much more in terms of whether this deal is advanced or whether it's something that Middlesbrough look definite to do, but he has been linked, and in my opinion, I think he would be a decent addition, certainly on loan until the end of the season. Now, probably the signing that Middlesbrough have spoken about most in the last couple of days has been the potential deal to sign Morgan Whittaker. Now, Whittaker is one of the top talents really in the Championship. He's endured a pretty difficult season, I guess, playing with Plymouth, but that's been down to the fact that Plymouth have been struggling at the bottom of the league, and they're battling relegation, and Wayne Rooney's time at the club was shocking and that sort of thing. And it very much feels like Morgan Whittaker's a player who is about to get snapped up and go to one of the division's bigwigs, I guess. Middlesbrough heavily linked with a move for the player. There's been some suggestions that Middlesbrough have already made a bid for the player. I'm not exactly sure how accurate that is, but Middlesbrough certainly seem like they're keen on a move to sign him. Burnley are also interested in signing him, and Morgan Whittaker, for those who don't know, he is someone who is quite versatile in attack. He can play in a number of different roles. I think his best position is probably playing on the right flank. He's a left-footed player, so someone who plays on the right flank and likes to drift in field. I think he'd be a really, really good signing if Middlesbrough could get it done. He's the last couple of seasons, he's been absolutely outstanding. He really showed his quality last season in particular. This season's been a little bit more difficult for him, and I think he's a sort of player who would really excel at a club who are playing at the top end of the division, and also a club who are playing a real attacking football like Michael Carrick's team do. I think he would come in. I think he would fit in seamlessly. I think he would provide goals and assists for Middlesbrough, and that could be a really, really exciting deal to get done. The latest on him, barring that Middlesbrough are interested in him, he was due to play for Plymouth in the match on Wednesday night against Burnley, a match that Plymouth ended up losing 5-0. He was due to play. He's obviously a key player for Plymouth, and he didn't basically didn't turn up for the match. It's been reported in some sections that it has been down to a dead leg, so an injury was what ruled him out. But the manager came out after the game last night and just said that he simply didn't turn up for the fixture. So it's a little bit of a tricky one, and a player who's gone pretty much AWOL from his club is always interesting, as people like to force through moves. I think as far as Middlesbrough are concerned, it's very, very clear that he's someone who wants to move on this month. Like I said, I think the opportunity to play for a club at the top end of the Championship would be really appealing for him. I think the chance to play under Michael Carrick would be appealing, because I really think the Middlesbrough would be able to get the best out of him. We've already seen a fair amount of it during his time at Plymouth. But I do think the Middlesbrough will be able to get even more out of him. And according to reports from Plymouth Live, Middlesbrough are leading the race to sign him. So this is definitely one to keep an eye on. The fact that he went to AWOL for the last game means that he's very, very keen to get this move pushed through. It's going to be top of the agenda with Plymouth. They're not going to be able to drag their heels and potentially sanctioning a deal. If he's unhappy there, they are not going to be wanting a player of this importance and this significance sulking basically between now and the end of the season. So if he does want to leave, it does feel like Plymouth will need to do something about it. They will need to try and get the best deal possible for him. But also move him on, because they will need to move him on in order to bring in a replacement for him. Because, like I said, Plymouth are struggling at the bottom of the Championship. They're really, really in a quite dire position, and they'll be looking to avoid relegation to League One at all costs. So they need to get the situation sorted. For Middlesbrough, it'll just be very much about biding their time. We do have a number of quality attacking players at the moment, so it's not a deal that needs to be done here and now, like in the next couple of days. But if Middlesbrough can strike a deal that's suitable for the club, so making sure that they're not paying over the odds for the player, it does seem like a deal that will be very, very exciting for Middlesbrough to do, and someone who would certainly help Middlesbrough's promotion hopes between now and the end of the season. I certainly want to know what you think about Morgan Whittaker, so drop into the comments below and let me know what you think about him, whether you think that he would be a good signing for Middlesbrough, and whether he could potentially make the difference as Middlesbrough look to secure promotion, or at least secure a top 6 position come the end of the season. Now for some of the outgoings. Now, I did a video on this just in the last couple of days on George Edmundson's situation, so I won't go on about it too much. George Edmundson is now back with Ipswich Town. He was recalled by Ipswich just an hour before Middlesbrough's clash with West Brom on Tuesday night. Really caught Middlesbrough off guard. A line which really stood out from Craig John's article for Teesside Live was that Middlesbrough officials aren't happy. It really sounds like the rug was sort of pulled from beneath Middlesbrough. George Edmundson has been a really important player for the club so far this season. It was almost certainly going to be involved against West Brom on Tuesday night. He was likely to start the game. Such has been his importance this season. He made 21 appearances for Middlesbrough, but it feels like this has been a move from Ipswich that has been forced to play a little bit of hardball with Middlesbrough as they look to pursue a permanent deal. So Edmundson is out of contract at the end of the season. He's been on loan with Middlesbrough for the first half of the season, and Middlesbrough have had 2 different offers rejected by Ipswich for the player. The last one was worth a total of £850,000. That was, like I said, rejected by Ipswich, and it feels like Ipswich are really just kind of trying to force Middlesbrough into upping their offer for George Edmundson. But I think as far as Middlesbrough are concerned, I have full faith in Kieran Scott here. I don't think he's anyone who's he's not going to get mugged off in a negotiation like this, because ultimately Middlesbrough are in a really quite strong position on this one, because first of all, Middlesbrough have a number of central defensive options in Rav van den Berg, Dale Ryan, Matt Clark, all of whom are very good players at Championship level at centre-back. So we don't need him back immediately, if need be. If the deal doesn't happen, I think Middlesbrough will be just fine. And the second part of it is the fact that he's out of contract at the end of the season. So Middlesbrough aren't going to be wanting to pay over the odds for a player who's going to be available for absolutely nothing in the summer. Yes, there is a convenience factor to getting his future tied up. There'll be no uncertainty come the summer. They'll be able to time up and get him committed to the club and get him on a long-term contract if they were to sign him this month. But ultimately, he would be available on a free in the summer, so Middlesbrough aren't going to be paying over the odds for a player like that. But also Ipswich have sort of shot themselves in the foot a bit as well, because because of the rules, George Edmundson he's not allowed to play for anyone else. So he's not going to be able to go out and sign permanently for anyone in January and be able to play for them in the second half of the season. They're not going to be able to send him on loan to anyone else because he's already played for 2 clubs this season. He's obviously played 21 times for Middlesbrough, but he also played a minute of a Premier League match for Ipswich back in August, which means that he's played for 2 clubs this season. So what George Edmundson's second half of the season will either be playing for Ipswich, playing for Middlesbrough, or not playing at all. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens with this one. Michael Carrick spoke after the game against West Brom. He didn't rule out the fact that George Edmundson would sign on a permanent deal, but certainly I don't think Middlesbrough are going to be paying over the odds. They're certainly not going to be bending over to pay exactly what Ipswich want, because ultimately he is going to be available on a free transfer come the end of the season. And Middlesbrough are well stocked in defence. So it's certainly one to keep an eye on. It was a really interesting Tuesday night. I don't think anyone thought that George Edmundson was going to be a player who would be attracting the headlines on that particular evening, but certainly one to watch in the next couple of days. I think he'd be a good signing at the right price. I quite like George Edmundson. I think I'm not suggesting that he's sort of reinvented the wheel at centre back. He's been a solid option for Middlesbrough. He's defensively sound. He's good in the air. A little bit slow at times. His ball playing from the back isn't great. But he is a solid championship defender, and so if Middlesbrough can get a deal done at the right price, I think it would be a good move. But certainly, I don't think Middlesbrough will be paying over the odds for him. I don't think we really need a central defender, I guess, in terms of the other players that we've got available. So, yeah, certainly one to keep an eye on, because I do think it's probably a deal ultimately that will get done with possibly Ipswich backtracking and just accepting what they can get given their situation with his contract. Josh Coburn, he's a player who's been in the press in the last 24 hours as well. Reports from the South London press have suggested that Millwall are interested in signing Josh Coburn on a permanent basis. Now, Coburn joined Millwall over the summer on a season-long loan. He got off to a great start at the Den, but he did suffer an injury, which has kept him out for the time since. But clearly, Millwall have seen enough from him to suggest that he could be a player that they want to sign permanently. They have had a change of manager in the last couple of months, and it's Alex Neil who's in charge at the Den now. But Josh Coburn is a target for Millwall as a potential permanent signing this month. There hasn't been anything in the reports about how much Millwall will be offering to buy him. There hasn't been any suggestion about how much Middlesbrough would be demanding, but Middlesbrough would potentially be open to selling the player for the right price. Now, Coburn's a player who, in my opinion, is a really good championship level player. Middlesbrough, obviously a championship level club, so there would be some people saying that Middlesbrough should be keeping him if he is someone who is able to score goals at this level, but he just doesn't really fit into the way that Michael Carrick's team want to play. The game always seemed to sort of pass him by a little bit. He's not someone who plays with the ball on the floor sort of thing. He's a bit more of a sort of old school traditional number 9, in my opinion, someone who is perfect for a club like Millwall, who like to get the ball and get it into the box quite quickly. That's not really Middlesbrough's style of play. The way that Middlesbrough like the strikers to play is very much off the shoulders of defender, using their pace to dip in and out and create problems and put defenders under pressure and create space for those around them. And Josh Coburn's not really that sort of player. So this one's going to be an interesting one. It does feel like a deal that Middlesbrough could potentially sanction this month. Again, it would depend on the transfer fee, because I think Middlesbrough know the value of Josh Coburn. They know that he's a good championship level player. And ultimately, I think Middlesbrough know that they'll be able to get a fairly decent transfer fee for him. Obviously, Middlesbrough sold Izzy Jones to Luton for £5 million. I'd have probably thought that Josh Coburn, my personal valuation, probably around about 4 million, something like that, maybe, which is fairly significant. That's money that could be reinvested in other areas of the squad. We are in a good position with our strikers. I know we've got Tommy Conway, who's been doing well. We've got Emmanuel Latte Lath, who's potentially going to be moving on this month, but if he was moving on, we'd get good money for him that would be able to reinvest in another striker. So I do think Josh Coburn is someone who is possibly dispensable for the right fee. There's nothing yet suggested that a deal is close to being agreed. It is a bit of a strange one in terms of timing, given that he is injured at the moment. maybe a bit of a surprise that Millwall have decided that they want to sign him permanently based off just a few games, but he did make a good impression. He's clearly a good lad and someone who Millwall want to have around, and I think there's potentially a deal to be done there. So that's certainly one to keep an eye on over the next week or so, whether that deal does become a permanent deal for Josh Coburn to go to Middlesbrough. If it does happen, I personally would wish him all the best. He seems like a really good lad. He's a good player, someone I think could score a lot of goals at championship level. And certainly if this deal was to come off, I think it would be a good move for all parties, to be honest. And last but not least, or laughed but not least, which is an awful pun, but Emmanuel Latte Lath, just to recap on his situation. So he's been heavily linked with a move away from the club this month. West Ham and Ipswich Town were both keen on him at the start of the transfer window. There wasn't really any offers that had come in for him, but then Atlanta United in the MLS came in with an offer worth £20 million for Emmanuel Latte Lath last week, which would be an MLS record transfer fee. Now, as it stands at the moment, that offer's still on the table with Middlesbrough. There's nothing to suggest that that deal has been accepted or that a move is gathering pace. It's a bit of a strange one because it does sort of feel like Middlesbrough may be biding their time to see whether anyone else comes in for him. He's been great, you've got to say, in the last week. I think a lot of players would go missing. I think when an offer's on the table, players sometimes like to force through these moves. Where we've just spoken about it with Morgan Whittaker and the measures that he's gone to try and force through a move away from Plymouth. But to be fair to Emmanuel Latte Lath, he's been great. He's started both games in the last week. He scored a goal in that time, and he's worked tirelessly on the pitch. And so you've got to hail his professionalism. He's really getting his head down and doing a job for Middlesbrough. It still feels like a transfer which is likely to go through before the end of the January transfer window. Whether that's to Atlanta or whether another club comes in for him, it's yet to be seen. But I think given how close he came to leaving the club in the summer transfer window, with Ipswich obviously coming in on deadline day to sign him, his agent has been particularly outspoken about how keen he is for his player to move on and play for a top tier club. It does feel like this is a move which is being actively sought by Emmanuel Latte Lath's agent. But credit to Latte Lath, he is getting his head down. He's doing a job for Middlesbrough, and that's all you can really ask from him. You can't begrudge a player who wants to go on and play at the top level and earn more money and potentially just excel at the highest level. So it is going to be one to keep an eye on. It'll be interesting if he goes to Atlanta United. I think a lot of people thought that he'd be heading to the Premier League, but as it stands at the moment, Atlanta are the only concrete bid that's currently on the table for Latte Lath. Nothing has happened just yet, but as it stands at the moment, things are looking all right for Middlesbrough. He's playing all of these games. There's no real need for Middlesbrough to force him out the door, so Middlesbrough will be making sure that they can get a transfer fee which they think is suitable for the player. And it's going to be an interesting week as far as Latte Lath's concerned. I do feel like it's a deal that will probably happen, but ultimately it'll be up to another club to pay Middlesbrough's asking price, because given his professionalism, given his goals, I think Middlesbrough would be more than happy if he ended up staying for the second half of the season and helping the club in their push towards the playoffs. So, an interesting week coming up as far as he's concerned. An interesting week coming up all round, really, with a lot of information there. I know that I've thrown a lot of names at you there in terms of incomings and potential outgoings as well. So I want to hear from you. I want to hear exactly what you're thinking about Middlesbrough's January. Are you encouraged about what Middlesbrough are doing? I also asked earlier in the video about the prospect of signing Morgan Whittaker. I think he'd be a really, really key signing if he was to come in. So drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think about the players who've been linked. Let me know your wider thoughts on Middlesbrough's January transfer window so far. Drop into the comments, hit subscribe if you have enjoyed this video, and I will catch up with you next time.